Before the path hardens, before the choice is made, stopping decision death in the high stakes trade. Welcome to the AI Momentum Podcast. We've all been told that AI is the key to stepping back from our businesses that takes up over 15 plus hours of our time. But for most founders and entrepreneurs, the reality is a lot messier. We don't just step back, we get pulled back in by the very systems we thought would set us free. Today's guest, Bryan Mills, lived through the ultimate momentum leak. He was running a successful agency with a team of 12, yet he found himself in a kitchen, staring at his wife, unable to make a decision as simple as what's for dinner. His brain had hit its capacity because he had allowed every small decision to harden around him. Bryan is now the creator of the step back system, and today we are going into the room where it all broke down and how he rebuilt his business so that AI does the work but he maintains the clarity. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to the show.
So Bryan, let's go back to the night at 8 in the evening. There are 12 people on your team. So why were you the only one who could fix the client's problem?
So there's probably a couple of things there. So the first thing, obviously, like the experience I had compared to the team was obviously there's a knowledge gap, isn't there? But what I failed to sort of do as I was building the agency was instead of building processes and trainings and sort of mapping it out so I could hand it over effectively. If things became a problem, I just outsourced it. And then the problem with just outsourcing it without creating the system is you outsource the problem, but then the problem just keeps coming back to you because they don't know what they're doing either because they need to come to you because like all the knowledge was in my brain, all the process, like all the conversations with the client, etc. So I tried to think, I was like, right, okay, I'm stuck, outsource. And then it actually turned out to be, well, I'm stuck because the process isn't there, not the person. And that's sort of how I became a big bottleneck because I just kept on outsourcing things and just pushing it out to a team and thinking, all right, well, it's off my plate. The problem was still there. It was just on someone else's plate who now didn't have as much knowledge and needed more guidance. So it actually became a hindrance more than a help.
Sounds like the foundation was kind of cracking instead of it being like a one-off emergency kind of situation. So the next day when you were home with your wife, you asked, like, she asked you what's for dinner and you kind of just froze. Why was a simple dinner choice the thing that finally broke your brain capacity?
It's mad, isn't it? Because it's such a simple question of like, what's a dinner? You should be like, yeah, I'm hungry. I fancy this. The problem was like, even when I wasn't working, I was working. Like, there'd be Slack messages, there'd be things going on in the brain. Like, I was always trying to put out a fire. I was always trying to think of where's the next lead coming from? How can we sort out a client issue? The clients all wanted me because I was the expert. Um, so you've only got so much brain capacity, like ever. So and that took absolutely everything up, and I was so burnt out. It was the night before. I was like, I need a rest. I need a break. I need a break. I need to just switch off for the night. And a client issue came through the door. I dealt with it. Took me a few hours, and then so I didn't have that rest. So when it came to that night about, hey, what's for dinner, and I just froze, like just stood there in the kitchen, like um, just brain capacity completely took it up. There was that many spinning plates to try and deal with, that many people relying on me, like obviously a team of 12 all looking to me to feed them every month. Um, it just became quite a lot, and obviously that's why I couldn't even answer what's for dinner. I just froze, and I knew then if I don't turn off tonight, I am screwed.
I think being overwhelmed is a very, very real problem as well, and especially when you have so much on your plate. Pardon the pun. So, what was the what was the invisible assumption you were making about your role as the more experienced one that kept every single decision landing on your desk? You were the SME.
Yeah, I was the whole business. Even though like I probably got paid the least. So it came to a point like I think by watching my dad do very much the same thing with his own business, sort of like the preconditioning of hard work just solves everything, sort of, and just like it's easier and it's quicker to just do it yourself. And it just became that many clients and that many things. It was like, oh, I'll just do it myself. It's quicker, it's easier than explaining things. But by solving the short-term problem of getting the task done, I was creating a long-term death date effectively. Like I wasn't going to survive. Um, and that sort of invisible sort of scenario where it's like, well, no, I'll just do it, I'll just do it, I'll just do it because like I used to treat it like a badge of honor. It was like, no, like people used to say, I don't know anyone who works harder than you. I was like, well, yeah, like, oh yeah, like, I'm good at this. And it was actually the complete opposite. I was a good grinder, but I wasn't a good business owner. And that's ultimately what sort of like destroyed everything.
When you were building the agency, I presume there were loads of manual tasks that you kept doing by yourself because, you felt it would stay flexible, but it kind of became a permanent anchor on your time. So if we go into like the details, could you highlight a couple of those manual tasks that made you feel so overwhelmed, took up most of your time?
Yeah, so like with a service-based business, it was and especially an agency, you always need stuff off the clients, like whether it's onboarding stuff, whether it's information, whether it's assets, like you always need to be chasing them for stuff, and they never deliver on time. Like they never give you, you'll set a project timeline, and they will eat into it all the time by not giving you what you need, but the end date never seems to move for them. So that sort of constant pressure and compounding of like, hey, that's not like it was like like a boiling kettle. It was like if we were getting closer to the end result, but nothing was actually happening. And then we'd be trying to rush things through, and then it produced poor work and stuff like that. So some of the manual things was like follow up, like chasing clients, collecting data the right way in order to be able to turn it into something else. So that was like what was one of the big ones. And then lead generation, a lot of people really, really struggle with lead generation. There's a lot of organic methods, right, especially on Facebook, etc., which turn out to be very manual tasks. So there was quite a lot from a delivery and a marketing perspective when we put it into the four departments. Like fulfillment and marketing caused a lot of manual issues. Um, that we had to find a way to sort of systemize the follow up, the chasing, and like putting some boundaries in place to, hey, if you delay us, we'll delay you. And that was an uncomfortable situation to sort of put yourself into.
I think as an agency, setting expectations is like one of the hardest tasks to do, and setting timelines is even harder. So,
Oh, almost definitely, especially because people pay you as well. So like you almost feel like you need the money, so you sort of take the crap that comes with it.
yeah,
When that just becomes worse and worse, or you'll drop your price to get the client, and then you end up with a really bad client.
yeah,
So there's loads of different sort of external influences at play, that variables at play that sort of drive the issues that arose in the agency.
right. But the good news is you eventually wiped your whiteboard clean. So, what was the hardest thing to erase? The part of the business you felt had really hardened and, well, it couldn't be automated anymore.
The hardest part to erase was me trying to jump into everything. Um, and people just bribe, 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 bribe. Like, what can we do? So there was like boundaries and systems, and I remember literally wiping that whiteboard clean, and I was like, right, where do we start?
Yeah,
And then it was a case of splitting the departments up and going, right, okay, the business partner takes these two parts of the business, I take these two parts of the business. And mine was always going to be operations because I'm very good at systemizing work. Just for the agency, I completely forgot I was good at that. So we split the departments up, and then I started building automations and flows and sort of systems that allowed us to not have to chase contracts, payments, onboarding forms. I remember our onboarding automation that we built in the end was about 25 steps long.
yeah.
Just because obviously the amount of stuff that you want to acquire from the client and follow-ups and reminders and stuff like that. It was 25 steps long, and I think I automated 23 of the steps in the end.
So, which AI tools did you explore to do that, and which is the one, like the ones that you finalized on?
So we use obviously various AI tools, and because AI is so fastly changing, like what we
Hmm.
used years ago compared to what we use today is like so different. So one of the big things was we were in an automation, we were in ClickFunnels as like a funnel builder, etc. We moved from ClickFunnels to Go High Level because their automations were a lot better, and you could build in AI and response checking and stuff like that. So Go High Level was a major shift for us in terms of management of quite a lot. ChatGPT is obviously what was the front runner, and we use ChatGPT a lot to once the triggers come in to send information to get that sort of data turned into what we needed and then brought it back. So ChatGPT was a big one. Then we came across as things have evolved, like make.com, NAN. We're now looking at using AI to build to then deliver what we need to deliver instead. So the progression's been really, really interesting from what we used back then to what's potentially going to happen, obviously, in the future.
So, when you first committed to high level automation, let's say Make or GHL, what felt small about that choice at that time that you now realize carries massive weight for your future flexibility, like you just said?
So it was really, really interesting because I was a ClickFunnels fanboy. I absolutely loved the software, loved the community, loved Russell. I was like, yeah, I was like, I'm never leaving this. And I paid for ClickFunnels for years. And that small choice to move from it sounds like a small choice, doesn't it, moving from ClickFunnels to Go High Level? But that took me a while to go, that's where we're going to move to, and then sort of cut ties with ClickFunnels altogether. Even from moving from ClickFunnels 1 to 2.0, that was like, it's such a small choice that has unlocked so much, but at that time was such a big choice because it was like where we built everything. It's like what every software that we were used to. But the problem was, it was like you needed ClickFunnels, then you needed Zapier to move things around. You needed Active Campaign for your emails, and then it was like, right, okay, where's that workflow? Where's that automation? Three different softwares not having that full capacity to talk to each other. Um, Zapier's gone down, the Zap's broke, something's missed. Whereas like, so it actually became a bigger problem in the end. So where actually when we did move, and it was like everything was inbuilt in the same place, and we could start getting it to talk to each other internally. It became such an easier process. Originally wiping the whiteboard clean and drawing out the boxes like a flow chart and sort of mapping out that sort of thing. Going right, okay, that's what we're going to build. Originally, it went from ClickFunnels and was like, this isn't the tool. Then it went to Go High Level. That has predominantly stayed the tool. But then the AI functions in Go High Level has stayed very limited. So then we've had to go out and use and push it and use like make.com to then push to be able to leverage ChatGPT and Claude effectively. And now we're just stumbling across something called like CloseBot as well. So we can look at sort of automating the DM setting in a better way. Um, because Go High Level's AI features are okay, but they're not top tier. So we're still going to have to go out and use other AI tools, but from where it was back then to where it is now is so much easier. Um, so make.com is a better sort of scenario than Zapier or Zapier, depending on how you say it, the better version. And then you've got N8N or N8N, yeah. And that people are going crazy for it, but I think from a user experience perspective, I feel like the more you go into these automation tools, the more you feel like you need to be a coder. And then that sort of takes away from teaching people how to do this because we're not coders. Like 90% of us aren't coders. So I feel like make.com is sort of like the bridge just before you go to, whoa, I actually really need to understand a little bit more. So we're building like micro softwares around our business to allow us to not have to use make.com or not have to use NAN. Like there's a theory called like vibe coding. And basically chat to it like ChatGPT, and it can build you your apps, and then you can connect them together with GHL to sort of fulfill those last pieces. Um, so it's just really interesting how that journey sort of changed and where people have had to go up to that sort of coding level at NAN and now are coming right back down because obviously there's softwares and different tools that allow you to still chat to it like me and you were chatting, but actually build something that's worth it.
To build these micro softwares, are there any specific vibe coding platforms that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so the one we mainly use is called Lovable, at lovable.app, and that's one that we use quite heavily. And we sort of make like these different dashboards and these different softwares that you can pull in from, like pull the data in from Meta and GHL and stuff like that. I'm in the process of building one, which is going to help basically identify YouTube channels and keywords and sort of the priority keywords that you should go after and stuff like that. Similar to TubeBuddy, but it's from Google. Oh, AI Studio at Google. That's another one that I'm testing out at the moment. But from a perspective of what I'd tested and true is Lovable that we use quite a lot.
So, how do you decide when a specific AI tool genuinely fits into, let's say, a lifestyle business versus when it's just another piece of digital clutter that would
Mm.
probably be adding weight down the line?
So the issue with the likes of like like ChatGPT or Claude, etc., was this is where make.com come in quite nicely with the schedule point of view. It's like ChatGPT is great, but it's at such a surface level, and you've got to do quite a lot of training to it, which means from a perspective of using make and then a ChatGPT prompt, it still doesn't come with the outputs. So coming into the whole sort of building a software to create what you need and train the software to get the output, and then building the bridge between the two, because you can always create a simple what they call webhook between GHL and like an AI app that you've just created. We're going from a point of view is like we've used all these AIs and like we've tested all these different AIs, and it's like now we've got this bigger bank of AIs to what you're talking about, and it's now right. Okay, we can actually replace that and that with this software that we can build through this AI software platform app. So okay, so we can get rid of that too. We can connect those two. Cool, two gone, and then we're going through that. So we're coming through this sort of phase now. It's like we've used quite a few, and it's now like, hey, we can actually build this and this and this to sort of get past, and we're starting to scale back down the amount that we are using, as you say, from a digital clutter space. Because what I'm finding a lot of people are doing is at a basic level is they've got the funnel building platform, and then they've got ChatGPT, and then they have to build whatever they want in the funnel builder, go to ChatGPT for their copywriting and everything else, but it's still manual tasks. So you have to manually go do the stuff and go high level. You have to manually come back into ChatGPT and then copy and paste and move things around, even from like an email marketing perspective. So we're just building out the situations where that just happens naturally. So, like you'd wake up in the morning and start creating your content piece, you wake up in the morning and these between GHL potentially and make.com and a new Microsoft software, you wake up and hey, here's all your drafts for the day. Here's your drafts for the next 7 days. What do you need? How can we help?
If you're experimenting with all of these different tools pretty regular basis, how do you decide which tool actually fits into, let's say, your existing culture or your daily habits of continuing or building the business?
The best way I can sort of describe if the tool is a good fit for me, my business, my brand, is I always come at a tool with like three sort of focuses. Is like, will it make my life easier? Is it easy to use? And can I get myself out of it? And then when I look at those from that perspective, it's like, right, okay. So for instance, NAN looks like a really, really good tool to use, but the user interface isn't quite hard to deliver. So I'm going to have to outsource that. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather be able to use AI to connect these things. And I've got no problem outsourcing when it's the time is right now because of the step back system. I know when to outsource and when not to. Whereas obviously back in the day, it was just outsource, 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 and not the three other steps of the step back system. Um, so now we look at like if I can use the tools because I'm not techie. I know from this conversation it probably sounds like I am, but I'm really not. Like compared to some people, like the average person is probably 10 times more techie than I am. Can I use it? Is it easy to use, and can I get myself out of it? And then we start to look at the outputs as well. Like for instance, I used ChatGPT for a long time to help me with copy. I've moved over to Claude and the copy output because of the extra training that I can put in there. 10 times better. So we've moved there. We've organized Claude in a more efficient way compared to ChatGPT, where it's just been years and years of sort of like learning, like training myself and testing different things. It's now, hey, Claude's now going to be the streamlined, clean version of exactly what we do. Can I get myself out? Yes, I can. Claude's that easy to use. It's easy to train. We can train it more. It doesn't forget the files like ChatGPT does. So it's like, hey, that's better. I don't have to come and do this again. And it's always going to change and it's always going to grow. And that's why it's more important about the system, the step back system rather than the tool, because the step back system is the process that allows you to understand at what point you focus on what and then how to actually get yourself out.
One of the things that
Mm.
came to my mind is like I don't use Claude as much for copy. While I've heard a lot of people talk about Claude for copy, I use Gemini. But then what I have done is I have all of my documents, my ICP, my plans, what I want to do, my vision, everything in Notebook LM. And I have built a Google Gem that I have then connected that notebook LM notebook to that Google Gem, and I've put instructions like don't let me deviate away from the core of what this gem is for, etc., etc. And any
Mm.
copy that I get then is very oriented towards my style of speaking, the kind of content that I should be posting. Of course, I don't take it and do it copy paste, but at the same time it gives
Mm.
me a very nice outline of how I should be presenting the
Nice.
information. For an entrepreneur or and teams now drowning in these various AI tools, the rat race is often in decision friction that leads to decision death. Did you ever see yourself get stuck revisiting the same choice even after the automation was supposed to have fixed it?
Yeah, we go back and revisit different things based on how, well, not how time flies, but how things develop. So, for instance, there's easier ways to then go and get the right information or to get the right copy or to do different things. So we always go back, not constantly, but we will go back and revisit automations, not because we get stuck, but like the tools have developed, things have got easier. There's now something new that we could potentially do. Um, so we go back and revisit automations, not from a oh crap, it's broke, but from a hey, let's go back and improve. So when we have those lulls in situations, it's like hey, we can go back, we can take a look, we can see where, like, if there's better open rates, is there a better way to get this information across to the client or across to the team or across to the student? And we go and look at these different things. So yeah, we do go back and revisit, and sometimes we'll pull a tool out and we'll put a tool in, just depending on what we need. But the always idea is can we be as streamlined as possible? Can we be as automated as possible? And how much can we get AI to pick up the slack? So the hidden cost of it is time. And time's a huge, huge thing that I've always sort of valued more than anything. It's like if things are taking up your time, like is it a $5 task? Is it a $20 task? But because it's a $5 task, but with a $30 brain, like it changes. So it's how can we get that point where it just keeps coming out in the right sort of way, in a system, in its regular scheduled way. So yeah, we are looking at coming away from ChatGPT. And I feel like the moment we could put a VA in like inside instead of me to do the manual movement inside of ChatGPT, and that would have had to have been the process 18 months ago, 24 months ago. But it doesn't have to be the process now. So it's now, okay, can we go back? Can we revisit? Obviously, I've used ChatGPT for a very, very long time, and it's now coming to me. It's like, oh, we've lost these project files, or these aren't in our database anymore, or it's like, well, actually, cool, we can come and do it this way instead. Um, and it was a very good learning tool, and obviously it helped grow a lot of things. But now it's a case of, well, I value my time, and moving things around manually in ChatGPT into a funnel, into this, into that, isn't worth my time anymore. But when you look at the step back system of process, automate, AI, outsource, like we don't have to get to outsource yet because we can automate and AI it. So at least then we can keep the VAs that we do have in a streamlined, focused manner without giving them a task that they don't need to do either.
You had, initially mentioned at the start of a conversation that you've automated 25 out of 27 steps for client onboarding, right? So what is the one thing you will never automate because you've learned it requires human clarity?
Okay, the one thing that I will never automate is the coaching side of things. What I feel isn't the one thing that it can't be automated, it can't be outsourced, we can't use the AI, is because AI still fails on emotional intelligence, on that rapport building, on that scenario where it's like, hey, like, yes, I can answer your question, but do I understand you? And I think when you're talking about coaching clients, or like coaching clients or coaching students, you have to have that emotional intelligence in order to see where they are, know where they need to be, meet them where they are, and bring them to where they need to be. And what I've known in all my years of coaching is some people need their arm around them. Some people need a virtual slap across the face. Some people need analytical data to show to get them to move. Some people need an energetic sort of sympathization. AI is never going to be able. Well, it may do. I should never say never now, but AI can't do that in order to get the person you're coaching to do the work.
It kind of understands our
Mhm.
way of communication, so the responses back will also, if you ask it to, will also mirror the kind of conversation that we're having, like the commas, the full stops, you know. But then it's always only based on the words, the emotion through which we are communicating, that is still, we're unable to relay that directly to the AI can't understand that.
No, and what do we say? Is it 90% of communication is body language and tonality? AI is not picking that up. So yeah, okay, we could use ChatGPT's voice to voice to get rid of our drive-throughs, and AI could literally do our drive-throughs now. We don't need those people to set those orders because there's no emotional conversation required. But as you say, like if I'm trying to get you from like $0 a month to 10K a month, but we've got a mindset issue that's blocking something, like that's not going to be solved through AI because, as you say, the body language, like when we talk to someone, you watch the shoulders drop, like just that little turn, just that little glance into a different corner, to a different direction. AI is not going to pick up on what that means. So therefore, you can't serve the person the best by outsourcing that to AI. And outsourcing to AI and automating is all about bringing the best experience to the client. But if you can't do that with AI, then you definitely need to keep that human element.
If an entrepreneur is currently in, let's say, the dinner freeze moment, but where they are smart but they're totally fried, what is the first signal they should look out for to know which part of their momentum is actually leaking?
In order to identify what needs to be fixed first, is you need to understand that there's four departments in business. There's marketing, sales, operations, and fulfillment. Now, if your head is fried, you've probably got an operations problem. However, the head being fried could come from various different places. It could be that pressure of, hey, generating enough leads and sales, which is then causing the emotional pressure of not being able to feed them or the team, etc. So they need to sort of split the business into four departments. and then start placing the different things that are happening in their business into those four departments and the problems that are happening. Okay. So, for instance, they're not making enough sales. So, okay, instantly you think that's a sales problem. Okay, we're not making enough sales, it's a sales problem. But you actually need to go back and reverse engineer. So, from a perspective, okay, we're not making enough money. How many sales calls are we having? 10 a month. Okay, so it might not be a sales call problem, even if the close rate is 20% or 10%. If you're having 10 sales calls a month, you've got a volume problem. Okay, that isn't fixed by sales. That's actually fixed by, unless you do outbound, which is, um, it's actually solved by marketing. Okay, well, how do we get more people to book a call? What are we missing? Is there a marketing vehicle missing? Like, is there a VSL missing, time on brand issue missing, any sort of pitch to a book a call? Okay, is we have a sales vehicle to push people to book a call. Okay, cool. How many people are we getting there? And then by reverse engineering each process, you then can understand where the problem actually lies. Is it in sales? Is it in operations? Is it in fulfillment? Is it in marketing? Like, for instance, you could get loads of people through the door, but they leave at the end of every single month if it's a recurring product. So you're like, okay, you've definitely got a delivery problem. What's going on there? Is it, but is the delivery problem what was promised on the sales call isn't what's happening at delivery? So then at that point, you need to look at the sales problem. Like, what's happening at sales cycle to get people over the line but not deliver? Is there a false promise? Um, so that model is how I sort of identify all problems now. Is like, where does the actual problem live? Once you understand where the problem lives, you can then look at building the snapback system for that problem. So as we said before, like process, automate, AI, outsource, or manual task. And then when you start to map that out, things become clearer because you know, right, okay, I've mapped out the process. Right, I'm missing this step in the process. We don't have that. That's why people are leaving or X, Y, Z. Okay, let's go fix that problem. So you have to come at it as hard as it is. You have to try and take the emotion out of it and then start turning it into data-driven decisions and flows and processes, etc. But you can't do that when your head is fried. So if you do get to that point where you want to cry about what's for dinner, and that's not because somebody's a bad cook, it's because you can't decide what's for dinner. Like, you need to step away, not step back. You need to step away. That could be for 2 hours, 4 hours. You need to give yourself a complete switch off for you to be able to attack it at a different point at a different time. Like, I went and turned the PlayStation on, dusted it off. First time I played a PlayStation in years. Killed a load of stormtroopers and I felt better. Because I'm a big Star Wars fan. So, and that took 2, maybe 3 hours. And then I turned my phone back on. I was like, hey, business partner, I'm okay, but things need to change. And that's when we looked at the whiteboard, wiped off the whiteboard, and went again by splitting the department into, or the business into four, and then understanding process, automate, AI, outsource. Now, when I first done it, AI wasn't a huge thing. It wasn't as big as it is today. So at first it was process, automate, outsource. And now it's process, automate, AI, outsource. So even the step back system's gone through a growth.
What strikes me most about your story is how easily we may mistake being busy for building momentum. Guys, we saw today that if you don't intentionally design where a decision lives, whether it's in a person, a process, or a part of AI, that decision eventually defaults back to you. Bryan's transition from a 40-hour week to a 4-hour week wasn't just about the tools he used, it was about the moment he decided to stop being his own bottleneck. If you're feeling that decision freeze right now, take a look at your own four corners: marketing, operations, sales, and fulfillment. Which one is leaking your profits? Which one is stealing your brain capacity? Which one can be automated instead? Now, before we wrap up, Bryan, I want to give you the floor. For entrepreneurs, specifically coaches and agency owners listening, where can they find you, the step back system and passive buddies?
So probably the easiest place to find me is on YouTube. And So it's Bryan Mills dash Passive Buddies. So that'll probably be the easiest place to find me. If you want to connect with me on Instagram, I've just started out a new Instagram and moved. I've now moved to Bryan Mills Online. And then the easiest way to learn more about the step back system and the Passive Buddy scenario is you are going to have a workshop link um, for our next workshop inside the podcast description. Sign up for that free workshop link and we'll walk through the step back system, the process, automate AI, outsource, and obviously how to build a business where you're not as needed as you probably are now.
Everybody, you can find the link to Bryan's free workshop and his step back system in the show notes. Before the path hardens, before the choice is made, stopping decision death in the high stakes trade. Thank you for tuning in to the AI Momentum podcast. See you in the next episode.